Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's virtual PNR planning meeting. Before we move to the agenda, I have a few procedure and housekeeping points to deal with. Today's meeting is being held under the virtual meetings regulations using Microsoft Teams. All committee decisions will be as valid as decisions made at a standard meeting in a town hall. Today's meeting is being streamed live on the internet, and a recorded version will be on the Council's website within 48 hours. As Chairman, I can confirm public written statements will be read out by North Somerset Council officers. Membership of the Planning Committee consists of 13 members, adjusted to accord with political balance, agreed by all the group leaders and the Chief Executive. Members, please remember to use the chat function, and please remember to mute your audio when not speaking. If members are joining the meeting by telephone, ensure they are muted by pressing *6. Press *6 again to unmute. Please ensure the Chairman is aware you are leaving the meeting in regard to declared disclosable pecuniary interests. Compliance is essential to comply with the law. You will be invited back into the meeting by an officer following determination of the agenda item. Voting procedure. Please use the chat function when proposing a motion. State clearly what you are moving. This will aid the general public following the planning process online. If a member wishes to second the motion, again, use the chat function. Voting on applications will be carried out by roll call. The legal officer will call each councillor's name in alphabetical order. The vote will be taken on the basis that you have heard the full debate on the application. Please state if your vote is for the motion or against the motion, or you wish to abstain. This will ensure the vote is correctly recorded. Voting on matters of procedure, such as confirmation of the minutes, will be of a different format. Using the chat function, I will ask members if they wish to vote against the motion. Then I will ask if any members wish to abstain. All remaining members will then be taken en bloc as voting for the motion. Please ensure all mobiles are switched off. And are there any questions before we move to the agenda? Michelle?
No questions, Chairman.
Okay. Hazel, can you please undertake the roll call for today's meeting?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Bridger.
Present.
Councillor Bryant. Councillor Cherry.
Here. Present.
Councillor Cole.
Present.
Councillor Crewe. Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
Present.
Councillor Cronolly.
Present.
Councillor Harley. Councillor Leigh Morgan.
Present.
Councillor McQuillan.
Present.
Councillor Payne. Councillor Shopland.
Present.
Councillor Westwood.
Present.
Chairman, would you like me to go back and see if there are others who have joined?
Please.
Councillor Bryant? Councillor Crew? Councillor Harley? Councillor Payne?
He's muted.
Yeah.
Chairman, Councillor Payne is showing us in the meeting.
Yes, he is. He's just trying the headphones.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's fine.
Sorry, I had some issues there. I'm present
Thank you.
anyway.
Thank you. That's the roll call, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item 1, public speaking. For today's meeting, we have 2 addresses to be read out by officers. The first address will be under Standing Order 17A, allowing up to 3 minutes. The second address will be under Standing Order 17, allowing up to 5 minutes. So the first address relates to agenda items 6 and 7. Claire Hillier-Brown supports the proposals, and her address will be read out by Michelle Chesterman.
Thank you. I speak on behalf of the applicant to address the concerns raised by the Town Council in their referral to this committee. The applicant has fully engaged with officers of the Council over a sustained period. The applicant has revised the scheme on numerous occasions to address third-party and officer comments. The site is within a sustainable location and seeks to utilise previously development land within the settlement boundary and accords with the thrust of national and local planning policy. The result of the ongoing engagement with officers is a well-conceived, spacious scheme of high architectural quality that respects the conservation area, listed buildings and neighbouring dwellings. The proposal does not constitute overdevelopment. It creates 4 modest family dwellings with adequate amenity space that reflects the urban grey of the surrounding development. Whilst all 4 proposed dwellings have been revised to address comments, not a full revision to include reduction in the roof height so that it reflects the height of the existing buildings, thus removing the concerns of loss of light. It remains as is currently experienced. Proposed roof lights have been reduced from 8 to 3, obscured glass provided to the bathroom roof light and to the other 2 windows on the main elevation, which face existing gardens. The timber cladding elevational treatment removed and replaced with stone. Access and parking arrangements have been revised and are now considered acceptable by officers. A robust drainage strategy accompanies the submission. It concludes the development will not give rise to an increase in flooding. Officers have not objected on this basis. Third parties have raised concerns with respect to impact on ecology. A BAT survey accompanied the submission, providing details of the building inspection undertaken. 2 buildings were assessed as having low potential. All other buildings were assessed as having negligible potential. Whilst no evidence of bats using the buildings was found, a recommendation for avoiding impacts of bats has been identified and includes the buildings with low suitability being demolished under an ecological watching brief in the presence of a licensed ecologist. A condition is proposed requiring bird and bat box features to be installed in each of the proposed dwellings prior to occupation. The officer recommends that the applications be approved subject to conditions after 2 years of the applicant actively working with officers to secure this position, and we therefore urge members to grant consent. Thank you. End of statement.
Thank you. The second address relates to agenda item 8. Mr. Jacobus van Blerk supports the Town and Village Green application, and his address will be read out by Hazel Brinton.
Thank you, Chairman. I object to the conclusion NSC has taken on this TVG application. Though the meeting is a formality, the process of getting to where we are has been extremely exhausting. Not having the opportunity to speak to decision makers directly does not help. If there has if there has ever been any doubt that this land is more than just a piece of land at the end of the street, then a TVG application with over 450 local residents must go some way to disprove it. The additional of 209-page petition and a 350-page petition handed to the council over the last 3 years are the silent locals who have lost faith in the guardians of the fields. The fields that were gifted to the locals in exchange for building Hyther Green industrial estates to protect the residents from the N5 and give a space to enjoy. Without prejudicing my next step, I would propose a public inquiry and perhaps a site visit for the decision makers. For the council to provide one bit of evidence that the land was kept for planning. I have not found any proof except how the council has been protecting this land over the last 40 years until January 2017. Approving this TVG application is the only way to protect this last open space greenbelt land in Clevedon once and for all, a space that has enriched the lives of so many local families. End of statement, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 2, apologies.
Yes, Chairman. The Head of Legal and Democratic Services has received the following apologies. We believe Councillor Harley has submitted an apology and Councillor Shopland has substituted for Councillor Solomon.
Thank you. Item 3, declaration of disclosable pecuniary interests.
Nothing in the chat, Chairman.
Okay. Item 4, the minutes of the 15th of July 2020 to approve as a correct record. If you have any comments, use the chat function.
No comments, Chairman.
In which case I will undertake the vote. Are there any members voting against the motion?
Nothing in the chat, Chairman.
Are there any members wishing to abstain?
Nothing again, Chair. Oh,
so
Councillor Shopland is.
I wasn't there, so I don't know.
Okay. So all remaining members en bloc support the motion, and that is carried. Thank you. Item 5, matters referred by council, the executive, other committees, there are none. Item 6, application 19/P/2298/FUL, terrace of 3 dwellings and 1 detached 4-bedroom dwelling on 1 Woodlands Road. Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just run through the slides for members who are not familiar with the site. The first slide shows the site location plan. The area of the site is in red. It's comprised of some garage buildings in the middle of the site. In that area, there's the northern point, which is at the top of the triangle, is an area of yard area. On the right-hand side, as members look at it, there is a lane that comes off Woodland Road and goes down to the rear of the site that serves commercial properties on Alexander Road, and there's a yard area to there. On the west side of the site, there is again a lane, but this is a grass lane that runs up the rear of properties that front onto Copse Road. The frontage of the site to Woodland Road, the area in blue, is a large Victorian mansion that's divided into flats. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you. This is the proposed layout of the site. What's proposed is to demolish the existing garage buildings, and in the bottom left-hand side, that's in the northeast side on the lane. No, the other side with the cursor on that side, bit higher up. there's proposed to provide 9 car parking spaces to serve the 4 new properties. That's on the basis of 2 spaces for the 3-bedroom properties and 3 spaces for the 4-bedroom property. That is, as you can see, close to the access to Woodlands Road. Above the car parking spaces, if you can just go, that's right, that's plot 1. Plot 1 would be facing onto the lane and would be a 3-bedroom property. It would be separated, it would be detached and separated it from an access lane, which I'll come back to. Further to the north, then there's a pair of semi-detached 3-bedroom properties that go round the corner of the site, and they face towards a landscaped area in the northern corner, which is part of the yard area, and have rear gardens to the south. And then further to the south of that is plot 4, which is a 4-bedroom dwelling that has access to it from I suppose it's light brown coloured access, which is a pedestrian access from the east side, provided to a bin store, and to the front door is on the east side of the property. There is not access to the site and the little lane that runs along the west side of the property, which is at the rear of the properties on Copse Road. The properties to the west on Copse Road are listed buildings. The dotted lines across the plan show cross sections of the various heights. Could we have the next slide, please? This slide shows the elevations of the properties that front on the lane to the east side and to the north corner, which shows how they will be arranged and the height of those new properties and the floor layouts. Could we have the next slide, please? This plan shows the drawings of the proposed 4-bedroom dwelling. The drawing on the top left-hand side is the rear of the house, which would back onto the lane with a boundary wall, and then the roof above it with 3 roof lights on it. And to the right of that is the front elevation, which would face to the east. Although it's 2-storey in height, a number of the first floor windows would be obscure glazed. In the bottom left-hand side are the drawings of the floor layout, but one of the important things to note is on the right-hand side, the elevations of the gable of the property, which shows that the height of it would be 1-storey where it adjoins the lane to the west, and then it would rise up in height, and then there is a small element of the 2-storey element that faces to the east. Could we have the next slide, please? This shows the cross sections on the west side of the site, adjoining the lane at the rear of properties that front onto Copse Road, and the height of the proposed new houses and the relationship to the rear of the houses in Copse Road. Could we just go back to the site layout plan, please? Thank you. Just to explain to members that this is a site that's in the centre of Clevedon. It was a commercial garage that's closed at the moment, but it could reopen as a commercial car repair garage. It's got houses in Copse Road on the west side. On the east side, it's got a range of outbuildings. Number 15C, you can see in the layout plan, is there's 2 flats in there that were being provided from a converted building. There are garage buildings and a service yard further to the northeast. Therefore, it's in planning terms, it's known as a brownfield site. We've looked very carefully at the scheme and the impact on it. We consider that it's a site that is suitable for development. The existing site is in poor quality and adds nothing to the attractiveness of the conservation area or the setting of the listed buildings. The proposal has taken a long time to reach this stage. We've refused a previous scheme on the site which had a significant higher number of dwellings on it, and consider that this scheme is now a suitable scheme that could be granted planning permission. It's met the concerns of residents in terms of providing sufficient off-street car parking spaces, 9, which meets the council's car parking standards. The report explains all the issues that we've considered in terms of the impact on the surrounding area, the conservation area, and the setting of the listed buildings, the car parking, the impact on overlooking and privacy. And we consider it meets all of those. Before you, there is a list of conditions. On the update sheet that we've circulated to members, we've proposed an amendment to condition 16 to say that all new natural stone on site should be retained for reuse for boundary walls and retaining walls in any future development of the site. Also, in addition, we'd like to add another condition, condition 17, which would be for the site to be decontamination because of its use as a former garage site. I think that's all I need to explain to members. Hopefully members have been able to visit the site if they're not familiar with it, to see it and what it looks like at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cherry.
Hello. Right. I have attended 3 of the town council committee meetings where residents have made complaints about this development, and also I've been written to by many of them, and I've also visited Copse Road, which is behind the development. And the reality is that this site is pretty unique. It's a lot smaller than it appears in plans, and they have while certain parts of this are very good, it's a good idea to develop brown sites. The reality is it is a conservation area, and it is backing on to a group of listed grade 2 villas on Copse Road, and all the residents are very, very concerned about the detail of this plan, because although you say there are 9 parking spaces and that it's all been thought through, the reality is that the access is very problematic on this site. And from what I gather, when people wish to leave the site, they're going to have to, at least 50% of those parking places are going to have to reverse back through on an unmade track. And on top of all of this, it's the fact that this is on a slope overlooking what are very, very small listed buildings. They're quite delicate, and if you enter into any of these listed buildings from the back, they are so close to this site. So I think in terms of protecting the neighbours, we on the residential design guide, we are in that's quite difficult to prove that we're doing that. And so overall, they feel that the actual development is too dense, it overwhelms, it overshadows, and they're not at all happy with the detail with regards to refuse either, because that's shoved at the back of the development, and it's highly unlikely that they're going to get it all the way through into the correct place. So you can't get the waste vehicles into the site to collect the waste. It's there's lots of problems with this development plan, but the main one is that the local residents feel that it's overwhelming and it's reducing the light, it's overshadowing, and that the impacts will negatively impact the conservation area. And they don't think that enough has been done to ameliorate that. Anyway, that's the arguments I've heard so far. So, yeah.
So, do you wish to make a proposal, or do you want to listen to? Yes, well,
one proposal that we did that we've kept making, and I appreciate that this is a very difficult time, is that there is a site visit with the planning committee, because this is such a it's such a complex design. You actually need to be within that to see exactly how the businesses there are in relation to the new development, the four residents. And I do think it would be better if we did have an inspection, just to see quite how close, and specifically because it's on a slope, the actual the impacts on the listed buildings on Copse Road are more dramatic than appear in the papers. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a proposal for a site inspection. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Is that Richard, is it?
Yeah.
And Councillor Westwood has asked to speak as well, Chair.
Councillor Westwood.
Richard Kent.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I, unless Richard wants to speak first? No?
Go ahead, Richard.
Right. Okay. Basically, the crux for me is the so-called lane access down the one side, which is why I'm supporting Councillor Cherry's request for a site meeting. This is an unmade lane, not in the applicant's ownership or control, which leads to a grassed trackway at the rear of Copse Road. It strikes me that I've lived in Cleveland for 12 years. I used to use the garage, very good garage, quite frequently. Maybe that says something about the kind of cars I drove, but used to use the garage quite frequently, and access to the garage was always from the road, the main road at the front. Was always across the garage or land owned by in the ownership of the garage. Using the side access was, I presume, a very occasional occurrence. It's the nature of the application is one that I could very much support, but I'd be looking really for people to come and have a look. As far as a site meeting is concerned, I think it'd be quite a good innovation as we are, supposedly moving away from full lockdown. It would be, I think it'd be entirely suitable for the members of the committee to come and have a look at this, because as Councillor Cherry has pointed out, the site may look, or the proposal may look fine on paper, but when you see what's being proposed, particularly, as I say, as far as the side access is concerned, then I think that might change people's minds. The proposal could, in my view, or a suitable proposal, could have access across the land in the applicant's ownership. There you go.
Okay, Richard.
Thanks, Chairman. In terms of the site inspection, as councillors recall, we have been operating under restricted arrangements for a while now, and whilst we are looking at how we can open up site inspections, the Planning Advisory Service advises that we do it in a very limited way, so that in groups of 6, including an officer, and we will be talking to you about the site inspection that the Chairman would like to hold for the site at Hewson's in due course. But the issue with this site is that on a risk assessed basis, it is possible to actually see it as individuals, a bit like we did with the first round of site inspections 2 or 3 months ago, where we could provide plans, and certainly that will be the most appropriate way of looking at it. And also we would always encourage councillors to go and look at sites before the committee meeting so that we don't have to defer applications. But I thought, Chairman, I'd just make that point. I think Simon Exley has just a couple of points that he'd like to make in response to what's been said, if that's all right.
Okay, Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think whilst I can understand members' concerns about the use of the lane does serve the rear of the garages, and there is a yard area at the back. And we investigated with the applicants about the usage of the lane, and they have got unrestricted use over it. But the plans which show the car parking spaces served off the lane actually have been widened, so it's all the parking spaces are on their land, and then there's a gap of 6 metres which would allow the cars to manoeuvre on the lane and get in and out. So our highway engineers satisfied that that parking arrangement is suitable. It can allow the cars to get in and out of the lane without causing a problem. And given that the lane already serves a number of properties down there, we don't think from a highway safety issue that there's going to be any problem with having those 9 spaces which serve 4 new houses won't cause an extra problem. The other advantage is it for the conservation area is that it takes some of the cars off Woodlands Road, and rather than have an access at the front of the site, it would just provide that parking area. We also looked particularly carefully at the arrangements for the refuse storage and the removal, and again we're satisfied that those arrangements are satisfactory. I know bin lorry wouldn't need to go down there, but it is close enough for collection purposes from what I understand. And finally, in terms of the impact on the occupiers of Copse Road, the biggest impact would be the house on plot 4, but following extensive negotiations with the applicant, the ridge height of that has been reduced substantially and is similar to the height of the existing building there, as we showed in the cross section. So we're satisfied in terms of the impact on the outlook and overbearing nature from the occupiers in Copse Road, that the design meets the council's requirements in terms of impact on the neighbours. So as I did say, that this is the 3rd application. We've issued a previous refusal on it. All the issues that we had raised previously, and these include involving the council's conservation officer, we're satisfied that they meet our policies in terms of protecting the neighbours and providing suitable access and parking. So as we said in the report, we're satisfied with these arrangements. It is an unusual site. It is a restricted site, but we consider this scheme has now satisfied us in terms of all our previous concerns with it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Michelle, any more comments?
Yes, Councillor Shopland, Councillor Bridger and Councillor Crockford-Hawley, Chairman.
Shopland, Bridger, Crockford-Hawley. Can I just remind all of you, we are debating the amendment, the site inspection. Councillor Shopland.
I was going to ask you that, Mr. Chairman. Are we discussing the site or the amendment?
The amendment.
Right then, Mr. Chairman, let's get one thing plain. The site is in 2 halves. The bottom half of the site was a builder's yard, and has legal access to the lane, regardless of what anyone might say. So the majority of the houses will be built on that site and will have legal access up the lane. I cannot answer about the garage because I haven't seen the deeds. Mr. Chairman, in a previous life, I have been to 2 site meetings on this site. I appreciate that this is a new committee, a new council, but I think we've honestly messed this applicant around about long enough. And we should now have sufficient information to make a decision and get on with it.
Thank you. Councillor Bridger.
I was just going to speak very briefly to the proposal for a site visit. I did actually visit the site myself on Monday, but this is one occasion where it's actually it was a struggle for me. I didn't have the plans with me. I thought I'd visit the site. I should be able to get the lie of the land fairly easily. I walked down the lane. I didn't realise there was a lane behind the houses in Copse Road where they made the site visit. So I think it's one of those instances where it would be useful to have a site visit and ask questions to officers, to Simon on site whilst we're actually visiting the site. The same isn't necessarily the case with a big open field, perhaps, but with such as the nature of this, it's quite, as I say, I find it difficult to map. Still find it quite difficult to map some of it's quite complex technical drawing there to what the photos I took, for example. So I would certainly find it useful to have a site visit in this particular instance.
Councillor Crawford-Hawley.
Chairman, I don't wish to speak. I was just raising the point that we should be discussing the amendment, not the proposition.
Yeah, correct. So, Michelle, any more waiting to speak?
No more waiting to speak in chat, Chairman.
So we have a proposal for a site inspection. Councillor Cherry, just to sum up.
I really think that we need that site inspection because the connections are so difficult to see without actually being on site, because there's so many different sight lines, and the fact is that the development is going to be right up to the boundary, and people need to see, for example, the listed buildings are actually built right up to the wall, and so they're going to be very, very close to the development, and it's hard to see that. I mean, in the past, people have managed to write about the wildlife corridor and the bats and all the rest of it. None of that has come out on this, and it's not in this. It's not in this discussion. I do think people need to go to the site to see it and actually appreciate all the different aspects of this, because there are so many different sight lines on the development and the houses and flats all around it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Sue, can you please conduct the roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I will now take the votes from each councillor in alphabetical order, and for each vote taken, the councillor will be confirming that they have heard the whole of the debate, unless they state otherwise. The motion is for a deferral for a site visit. When I say for, it will be for the site visit, against the site visit. Councillor Bridger.
For.
Councillor Bryant is absent. Councillor Cherry.
For.
Councillor Cole.
Against.
Councillor Crewe is absent. Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
For.
Councillor Cronolly.
Against.
Councillor Harley is absent. Councillor Leigh Morgan.
You're muted, John.
So I come back to Councillor Leigh Morgan. Councillor McQuillan.
For.
Councillor Payne.
For.
Councillor Shopland.
Abstain.
Councillor Westwood.
For.
I can just go back to Councillor Leigh Morgan.
Very strange.
Councillor Leigh Morgan, you're still muted. Oh, I think it's abstain. I think he's nodding.
Respectfully, Mr. Chairman, if you read his lips, he said against, I believe.
Yeah,
Right,
I agree with
against.
that,
Right, thank you.
yeah.
I thought he said abstain. Very similar.
I don't think it matters. Yeah.
The
He ain't on your side.
The votes for are 6 for and 3 against and 1 abstention.
Right, so this site inspection is carried. Moving on to agenda item 7. Number 19 stroke P stroke 2313 stroke FUL. Demolition of garage, Wooden Road, Clevedon. Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a separate application for the demolition works, but it is, if we can go to this first slide, you can see, sorry, the second slide, next one. That's the area covered by the demolition, but I think in view of members' decision to defer the previous application, members perhaps would want to defer this one for one cycle following the site inspection.
Councillor Cherry.
Yes, that would be sensible, I think, because it's absolutely vital that we have the site inspection first.
Yes, I don't think we need any more debate. Michelle, I take it there's no one wishing to speak?
No one wishing to speak, Chairman.
So, Sue, can you please conduct the roll call?
Chairman, it's not been seconded. I will second it.
Yeah, okay.
It's deferred.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman and Councillor Westwood. So for deferral, Councillor Bridger.
4.
Councillor Cherry.
4.
Councillor Cole.
4.
Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
4.
Councillor Cronolly.
4.
Councillor Leigh Morgan.
4.
Councillor McQuillan.
4.
Councillor Payne.
4.
Councillor Shopland.
4.
And Councillor Westwood.
4.
Chairman, that's carried.
Thank you. Agenda item 8, Town and Village Green application, Brookfield Walk, Clevedon. Who's Emma Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman. Members have the report which sets out the background of the application and the steps that have been taken to consider it. This recommends refusal as advised by leading counsel, who was advising the council as registration authority. In terms of an update, there was a representation received by email yesterday morning concerning the North Somerset Council land, asserting that it's held as open space. That representation has not received any further consideration due to it being submitted considerably outside the timescale for such submissions. It was about a month late. It may assist members if I say a few words in relation to statutory incompatibility, which is the basis upon which the barrister that was instructed has advised that this application be rejected. In terms of when land is registered as a town village green, then any use of it is severely restricted. It becomes a criminal offence to interrupt enjoyment of a town village green, and it's a public nuisance to erect any structures on it. So in relation to that, the courts have decided that where land is held by public bodies for specific statutory purposes, then it may not be registered as a town village green if that status would mean it could no longer be used for the purposes for which it is held in the first place. In relation to this site, there are 3 separate landowners, and the barrister has looked into the land holdings, and his view is that the North Somerset Council land is held for planning purposes, And holding land for planning purposes indicates that it would be available for development, which would be inconsistent with town village green status. The Highways England parcel of land is held, as one would expect, for highway purposes, and that would include taking actions such as improving highways or constructing trunk roads, which would be inconsistent with town village green status. And lastly, the portion held by Clevedon Town Council is held for allotment purposes, and where land is held for allotments, that does also include powers to improve them, carrying out drainage works, fencing, making roads, and those factors, council advises, would also be inconsistent with town village green status. So I hope that assists members with this matter.
Thank you. Councillor Shopland.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I will propose an amendment and then speak to it, if I may.
Please do.
I'm asking that the matter be deferred for at least 3 months so that more evidence other than this council's own advisory legal arguments can be placed before you and any necessary corrections in the application made. And having listened to the submission, I would add to that, if possible, a site visit be held.
Okay, so you will need a seconder.
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm allowed to speak to it first, and then they make up their mind if it's worth seconding.
Oh, I thought you finished. Carry on, please.
No, I only made the proposal. Mr. Chair, this is going to take a little time.
Okay.
I ask for your indulgence. Firstly, I was emphasised that this particular item on this particular day is not only a planning matter, it's a question of law. And you are being asked to make a binding legal decision, and that has to be based on evidence in facts. And you must be sure that you've got all that evidence in facts, that they've been presented to you. I believe that that has not been done, because from what I read in the minutes, it appears that you only have, to simplify it, the council's side of the argument. There is virtually nothing in there about what the other side think. It is a rather one-sided document. And I think in that case, any decision you make today could be open to valid criticism and challenge. Now, Mr. Chairman, sometimes there are advantages in being a simple old fogey sitting on a council, because I'm probably the only one present who knows the history of this site since it changed from agricultural usage to industrial. My family were involved, and we've taken an interest in the site and the people ever since. To illustrate my point about it being a one-sided advice you are given, I will just say this. In the 1980s, the housing estate was built east of Northern Way, and it left a piece of land between the housing estate and the motorway junction. That is the piece of land that was now become a industrial site. Now, when it was proposed for an industrial site, the people who had just bought their houses were very concerned, and they raised objections. And the developer offered to the council a part of that industrial site to be used as an open space. Now, there are newspaper reports to confirm that. In a way, I won't say it was a bribe, but it was a peace offering to the people living there, and they accepted it at its face value as they were told what it was: public, open space. Now, Mr. Chairman, that estate is divided from the rest of the town by Northern Way, which you know, anyone who lives in this area knows is a very busy, extremely busy road, which is virtually impossible to cross over at times. There is a small subway, yes, but for the majority, they are isolated there. There's roughly 450 people, give or take, involved in this. And the National Playing Fields Association say that there should be 6 acres of open playing etc. space per 1,000 people. That's in your local plan for 1994, if you want to look it up. I haven't got the current one to look at it. That's a fact, Mr. Chairman. That means that that site wants 3 acres, or is entitled to 3 acres. Now, also in the report was that Clevedon was sadly lacking in open space compared to development. That fact hasn't changed one iota. There has been no more public open space created in Clevedon since 1970 that I can remember. So that problem still arises. To reiterate, the estate has just the right amount of public open space that is required by, that is not a law, but those regulations. Now, Mr. Chairman, the site you have is in the green belt. Now, let's just use a little logic in this. If you owned a piece of land in the green belt and you claimed you had planning on it, or you were going to use it for planning, would you in your right mind allow it to be put in the green belt? I mean, that's either negligent, inefficient, or plain madness. And the council at no time has ever opposed this land being in the green belt, because basically it is accepted until now that it was public open space. There are letters in existence, because this has been queried over the years. There are letters in existence from senior officers of the council when asked a question about this land, who have reiterated firmly, positively, that it is open space, public open space. Now, obviously, I can't produce those letters today, but they can be produced. Now, Mr. Chairman, that begs the issue. It was never held for planning, because had it been held for planning, the developer would have developed it. He'd been a fool if he didn't. He gave it up, the development rights, so that it could be used as a public open space. I'm not going into the motives behind this council. That will come up if ever there is a planning application, but let me tell you this, they stink. But we'll go on from that. Mr. Chairman, I'll find my paper. There's been no meaningful public consultation on this. It's been impossible to hold public meetings. It's been impossible to canvass public opinion. The free newspaper is a joke that this council and everybody else advertises in, because half of Clevedon doesn't get it. I don't get it in my house. There has been a circular issued, yes. Did the district need a special needs school? Nothing about this particular site. No, Mr. Chairman, there has, in the true meaning of the word, been no meaningful public consultation. Now, on page 41, Mr. Bloom, I mustn't say what I think about QCs because I should get ad for libel, but he mentions highway land being protected by statute and allotment land being simply protected. The highway land, yes, there's no argument about that. That is protected by statute. The allotment site could be protected by allotment, but there is a very big query hanging over its status, and has been for a long time, as to whether it is suitable for allotments. Read his report earlier on, and he will tell you that allotment land can only be replaced by suitable land. Why is that piece of land allotment? Because your predecessor council built land flats illegally on a piece of allotment land belonging to the town council. That is a fact. I was the chairman at the time who dealt with it. And I wanted the town council to claim the land, but they foolishly accepted this piece of land and some money. That's history. Now, on those points about it, I'm very sad that this council didn't advise the applicant when they put the claim in for this green space that statutory land could not be included. They let them down. And quite frankly, that tarnishes our image as a caring and concerned council, because we didn't take the trouble to tell them. Now, Mr. Chairman, that's why I'm asking today for the matter to be heard, so that some of these things can be sorted out. Other arguments can be placed before you, so you have a balanced judgment. What your judgment is doesn't matter today. What your decision is in that case doesn't matter today. It's the fact that you have all the facts to make an informed legal decision. Now, these people have taken legal advice. They have raised money to defend this land. That's not a threat, that's just a question of fact. They are concerned, they are our residents, they are your concern as much as they are mine. And we have to see that their legitimate fears are dealt with properly. Otherwise, we're failing in our job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Richard Kent has asked to speak on procedure, and Councillor John Crockford-Hawley as well. Okay.
Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before I hand over to Emma Anderson, who can advise a little bit on the legalities and the points about evidence that Councillor Shopland has raised, I think probably at this point it is really important to underline that this is not the planning application that we're considering, and that's a separate matter that will come to committee in due course. And it's really important, therefore, that councillors don't express views in considering this item that could be deemed to be said that they had predetermined their position on the planning application. That's another debate for another day. You really do need to stick to the technicalities of this particular type of application and the very extensive legal advice that we've been given on it, which deals with the process. And if I may, I'll just ask Emma Anderson or Nick Brain, who's in the meeting, to come in on that point.
Nick.
Yeah, I don't know if Emma wants to comment first, but my advice would be Councillor Shopland is giving you information today. The applicant could have put that in with his application.
I think
what is before you is an application based on the evidence submitted by the applicant and on which you are asked to determine the application. You can always defer things. The same with planning matters. You can always defer for further evidence, but you are being asked to determine the application on the basis of the evidence submitted by the applicant. It was in the applicant's gift what evidence they submitted. They have had a number of extensions of time to respond to the council's case, and they have not, as is said in the council's opinion and in the cover report, they have not challenged the basis on which the land is held by this council or any of the others. They have had that opportunity. I think the request now to defer again is a matter for you to determine clearly, but that opportunity has been given, and you should be determining the application on the basis of the evidence submitted by the applicant.
Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
Thank you, Chairman. I have no wish to contradict the legal advice whatsoever. Just to highlight two issues we had in Weston-super-Mare, where likewise we established two town village greens. One was the Prince Consort Gardens in the ownership of the council, which had no other purpose and no deemed presumed future purpose other than as public open space. The advice we had was for it not to be designated. We went ahead and pressed for it, and in the end, I believe from memory, the council's opinion changed, and they were happy with us to go ahead for the designation, and that was done. The other one, though, interestingly, was a site in a developing area, in the Whirl area, which was held for a specific planning purpose, i.e. education. And the council went against its own officers' advice and decided that it would designate that land as a town green, and did so. It meant, of course, the education department had to change its plans and find somewhere else to do its schoolwork. But it is possible to go against legal advice and to win the cases. On the other hand, both of those cases had immensely detailed work from those people who wished them to be so designated. And I feel in this instance, that work has not been done.
So we have a proposal for deferment, but we haven't a seconder yet. So does anybody want to second Councillor Shopland?
Chairman, we've got a request to speak from Councillor Bridger as well in the box.
Okay, but as yet no one's come forward to second the proposal.
Nobody yet, Chairman.
Councillor Bridger?
Chairman, in which case if it's not seconded, the amendment should fall and you should be debating the substantive motion, or okay. You actually have no motion because that was moved as an amendment to, so you haven't yet moved the report recommendation either.
Right, so I'll just double check that no one's come in to second Councillor Shopland.
Nobody, Chairman, no.
In which case that falls. So we need another proposal.
Well, Mr. Chairman, obviously, as it's in my ward, I'm bound to move refusal, aren't I? I'll move approval of this application, I beg your pardon. And again, I will speak to it. I am not a legal expert. This application was put in for obvious reasons in a very short time. I believe a lot of the information was submitted, but I cannot prove it. So respectfully, I disagree with the solicitor on that point. And all I did ask was that time was given. That's not going to be done.
So you are now moving approval.
I look forward to the fight, Mr. Chairman. It will be fun. But I don't think these people have had a fair deal. They weren't advised of what was required about the statutory side of it. They should have been. Let's face it, what are we, 4 months since they started this? It's not a lot of time in the conditions that we're living in now.
Right, we have Councillor Shopland moving approval now of the application. Is there a seconder?
Nothing is yet in chat, Chairman.
Right. Interesting.
Chairman, move officer's recommendation.
Which is what Councillor Shopland's doing. So it's just what a seconder.
Sorry, I misunderstood what he was saying, actually. I
well,
apologise.
So Chairman, if I can help, I think Councillor Shopland was suggesting that the TVG application be approved as opposed to the report recommendation, which would be that the application be rejected.
Right.
Precisely.
Sorry, Nick, could you just repeat that?
Chairman, I think Councillor Shopland was suggesting that the application to make it a village green, town village green, be approved, i.e. the applicant succeed, whereas the officer's report and the recommendation from council is that the application should be rejected.
Okay.
Which was my recommendation, proposal.
So does Councillor Crawford-Hawley have a seconder?
Yes.
Okay. And is Michelle?
Councillor Bridger's got a question in the chat, Chairman.
Councillor Bridger.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wanted to just ask a question before we move to a vote on this, and neither do I want to contradict the QC's advice, and I'm not usually one for deference, but I note he ranks in the top 100 silks practicing at the Bar of England. But I visited the site on Monday myself, actually, and when you walk through the first field, I call it the first field you get to when you walk off Kelting Grove, is it? At the back of that field, there is a what looks to me like a permissive path into the field beyond that, which is not owned by the council, which is more, I think, bigger than all the fields owned by the council combined. There's like a sort of a tree branch in the way, but there's a ditch, so you can kind of duck under it. And it's a very, very well trodden path. And if you look at Google Maps, you can see that there appears to be in this field that I'm talking about, that wasn't me blowing my nose, it looks like it's used by locals to walk around. So I don't know who, presumably it's a private landowner, but I don't know whether that could be classed as a permissive path at all. But you know, it's not being used for anything. That very, very large field, as I say, that you can easily get to from the council-owned land here. I don't know whether Councillor Shopland knows.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not asking him to tell us who owns that land, but it does look a very well used path.
The field is in all that area is in continual use by the public. There is, as far as I understand it, a vehicular right of way to what is known as now the community orchard over this land, but the public use it as a public footpath. There is a vehicular access and a right of way, pedestrian, etc., to the land owned by the Cleveland Town Council, which is a part of this application. But the public use that area continually.
Through you, Chair, I don't think that's the field I'm talking about, but
Michelle, anyone else?
Nothing else in chat, Chairman.
John Crawford-Hawley, do you wish to sum up?
No.
So we have a proposal to move officer's recommendation. Hazel, can you conduct the roll call, please?
Yes, Chairman. I will now take the vote from each councillor in alphabetical order, and for each vote taken, the councillor will be confirming that they have heard the whole of the debate, unless they state otherwise. The motion is to move the recommendation in the officer's report, which is to refuse the Town of Village Green application. If you vote for, you are recommended refusal of the application. If you vote against, you are voting to support the application, and abstain is abstain. Councillor Bridger.
For.
I don't believe we have Councillor Bryant. Councillor Cherry.
For.
Councillor Cole.
For.
Councillor Crewe. Councillor John Crawford-Hawley.
For.
Councillor Cronolly.
For.
Councillor Leigh Morgan.
For.
Councillor McQuillan.
For.
Councillor Payne.
For.
Councillor Shopland.
Against, and can my name be recorded, please?
Certainly. Councillor Westwood.
For.
That motion is carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, just before you move on, if I can explain why I was dealing with that rather than Sue Buck. Sue advised the council as a landowner throughout the application, so obviously she was correctly recusing herself from advising the committee here, hence why I've come in to help.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 9, performance report. Richard?
Thanks, Chairman. This is the end of year report for the planning service, and you'll see the various tables that set out the volumes of work and the speed with which we've been dealing with things. The teams have been extremely busy, and in the last quarter we obviously came into the difficulties of working with lockdown, so that has been a very challenging time for the service, particularly as everybody's been working from home, as have you, adapting to the technology, and a number of processes have had to be changed or adapted. So, for example, site visiting and face-to-face meetings we've had to suspend. Things are gradually beginning to evolve, and as we move forward towards the end of the year, we are able to relax some of those interim arrangements. Having said that, we are experiencing a degree of pressure in a number of areas, and that is knocking on to the planning application service. So, for example, there is pressure on the highway flooding and ecology teams, and their inputs into the planning application process therefore take longer than they would normally do so, and that again is proving a challenge. What we have noticed as well is that uncertainty arising from the joint spatial plan, and similarly around some of the changes potentially to do with Brexit, did see a drop off in major planning applications in the latter part of the year, and that consequently meant a drop in forecast fee income, although that is looking better in towards the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter of this year. The final thing just to point out is that we have had a couple of staff changes. So those of you that knew David Tate and David Robbins, they've both retired. We've been able to promote internally. So Terry Carampini has moved up a level and has moved into planning policy, and a couple of others have shuffled up behind her within Simon's team. And we've appointed Charles Cooksley, who has joined us from South Somerset, which is excellent. We also have just so you know, we have a new principal planning officer joining Roger Wilmot's team from next week, which is good, and an experienced planner, which is excellent, given some of the problems we've had in the past with recruitment. Chairman, that's all I'd like to say about that, but I'll happily answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, any comments from members?
Councillor Bridger and Councillor Cropford-Hawley would like to speak, Chair.
Councillor Bridger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard, for your report. Just a couple of questions. You talked about resources being stretched, and that's even obviously prior to the pandemic. Now we have to obviously consider presumably preparing for possibly a very different planning regime once private legislation comes forward following the white paper consultation and the Bristol Airport appeal. It would be good to get a sense of what you might be thinking in terms of the white paper and what might follow, because I'm from looking at it, it would presumably have really quite fundamental implications for development management and how we manage that. And the second question was around something I think the government has put through, which is the potential for developers to delay CIL payments. And it's just a question really or a request that if a developer comes forward with such a request, could the relevant board members be advised of that, please? Thank you, Chair.
Certainly the white paper is something which has attracted a lot of attention for obvious reasons, and we will be doing a briefing for councillors and on that in due course. You'll have seen some of the notes that we put into members only in respect of that a week or so ago. What we don't know yet is exactly what that will mean for the planning services, because it's not necessarily always the case that what's in the white paper falls into statute, and certainly it can take some time for it to do so, but we are looking at it very hard. We have 12 weeks from when it's published to respond, and we will be putting together some of the shopping centre uses are being absorbed into a single use class, a class E, which will change the way we operate, and will certainly with the intention of it being able to encourage more changes of use within existing commercial areas without the need for a planning application. And there are various things to do with a more streamlined and quick response to developers' requests to extend construction hours and the like. So there's a whole raft of things which are coming into force now, specifically to ease the impact of the recession on business and the development industry. But then the white paper is a whole new raft of initiatives which we're still getting our heads around, but we'll certainly do a briefing on that. Regarding the point about CIL payments, there again, that falls into both categories. There are some changes which have been brought into force just recently, which is more about giving councils more discretion. And I think those we can certainly take on board, that if we do get requests from developers, we can pick those up with local councillors. But I think at this stage, we doubt that we will have too much issue with that process because it's effectively reinforcing powers that are already there. I hope that helps.
Councillor Crawford-Hawley.
Yeah, Chairman, there's a wonderful local government speak in section 3, and I think we need to, members that is, need to understand exactly what the inference is of this. Budget savings are being achieved through vacancy management in accordance with the council's financial management strategy. That means staff who go are not being replaced. We already have an insufficiency of enforcement staff, an insufficiency of planning staff, and this we can see throughout the entire organisation. And whilst I wouldn't expect the officers to be critical of their own employers, I think we as members need to be aware of the implications of this. Every time I send a memo to an enforcement officer asking why something is not being done, the answer is contained here. And I think our staff are often being expected to do much more than they should be doing. And it's our fault as politicians.
Michelle.
No more people asking to speak in chat.
Okay, item 9 is just for note 10. Item 10, plan and appeals. Richard.
Chairman, I think the report is self-explanatory on that point. The one thing I would say that obviously members will have been made aware of and will have has already been alluded to by Councillor Bridger is that Bristol Airport have given notice that they are intending to appeal the refusal of the planning application that the committee considered in March. That appeal hasn't formally been lodged. It was a press statement to say that that was the declared intention. We've had notice served on us that the likelihood is the appeal will be lodged around the 4th of September, and we will be acting accordingly. We have already been spending some weeks in preparation in terms of marshalling resources and looking at how we would defend the appeal if lodged, and being no doubt that we will mount a vigorous defence to the council's position.
Thank you. Any comments, Michelle?
No comments, Chairman.
Again, item 10 is for note 10. Item 11, no urgent business. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. Can you all please hang up?
Thank you, Chair.